Welcome to Introduction to Sociology, and today we shall be doing the module Differential Association Theory and Labeling Theory. Now, what is differential association theory and how do we associate it with? Usually, differential association theory is something which says that deviance is not inherited. You do not bring the genes of deviance within yourself. It is not in your head, but it is something which is learned like any other social process or any other thing in the society. The originator of the differential association theory is definitely Sutherland. Let's come to it. The time was 1930s, and one of the dominating explanations for criminal behavior, Edwin Sutherland's theory. Sutherland posed a much different approach to the standard bearers of the day as they attempted to explain the causes of antisocial behavior. Sutherland did not believe deviance was a product of deep-seated personal conflicts or something off or haywire in the biological makeup of the people. Instead, he assumed a more pragmatic approach and theorized that deviance was nothing but a result of learning. So, Sutherland, he went against the tide. At that time, predominant were the other theories which said that deviance was a result of something going haywire, something going out of the gear, and something out of the box. When maybe people are not well, maybe there was something wrong in the biological or the psychological makeup of the man, or maybe it was emanating out of the social conflict. It was here that Sutherland proposed a theory of deviance which was absolutely away from these prevalent theories. Sutherland's classic theory is most known for its 9 central propositions. Criminal behavior is learned. Negatively, this means that criminal behavior is not inherited, and I've already told you before that Sutherland was of the opinion that you need to learn deviance. It doesn't come from within. It comes with your association with the outside world. It comes how it comes to you, how you interact with the outside world. So it is out of your interaction with the outside world that embeds within you the seeds of deviance. Criminal behavior is learned in interaction with other persons in a process of communication. And this communication is verbal in many aspects and respects, but includes also the communication of gestures. As I've already said that in the symbolic interactionism process, as you know, that gesture, rather significant gesture, becomes very important. How you learn to identify a gesture and how it becomes important. So it is on the basis of this gesture that you learn to identify something, and it is on the basis of which that criminal behavior comes out or the deviant behavior comes out as a result of interaction with the others through your symbolic communication with the others. The principal part of the learning of criminal behavior occurs with intimate personal groups, but movies and newspapers also contribute. The most important agents of socialization, the primary agents of socialization, like your peers, the family, the friends in the school. So they are the one from whom you pick up the seeds of deviance, because they are the people with whom you interact the most. They are the people you mix up the most, you gel the most. Therefore, it's very likely that you learn the deviant processes and deviant methods from them. But also at the same time, newspapers, media, television, social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitters. So all this, Amazon, Netflix, whatever it is, all sorts of social media impose a kind of learning upon the individual. When criminal behavior is learned, the learning includes techniques of committing the crime, which is somewhat very complicated and sometimes very simple. The specification in which it moves is to the direction of motives, drives, rationalizations, and attitudes. Therefore, whenever we learn to commit a crime, the process can be quite complicated, but sometimes it's simple. But there is a long drawn process into it. It is rationalization. How you go on giving a meaning to your action, and what is your attitude towards the others, what are your motives. So that decides for you the course of your action. The specific direction of motives and drives is learned from the definitions of the legal codes as favorable or unfavorable. People are surrounded by individuals who support laws and those who violate them. A person becomes delinquent because of an excess of definitions favorable to violation of law, over definitions unfavorable to violation of law. And this is the principle of differential association. When person becomes criminal, they do so because of contacts with criminal patterns and because of isolation from anti-criminals. And I think this is quite clear to you. And you know what is a specific and what is the chief component of Sutherland's proposition? He says you become deviant when you become more associated with the people who favor the unfavorable codes of society, when they are more attracted towards the negative norms. It is from them that you learn that. So deviance becomes more clear and more eminent into you, and you become more attracted towards it when you are surrounded by people, you're associated with people who are more taken towards the negativity of the social sanctions, and they do not favor the legal codes of the society, the given norms of the society. So only when you mix up with the negative people, the differential association is more to be learned. Therefore, criminality or deviance is a process which is learned. It doesn't come from outside. Differential associations may vary in frequency, duration, priority, and intensity. This means that learning criminality entails deep immersion into interaction with the individuals who favor violation of the law. As I said that, it is one which talks about frequency, priority, and intensity. And more you have intense interaction with the people in the external situation, and more you get taken away by them, the more you inherit within you or emanate within you the sense of deviance. So it is something which doesn't just come from outside as in the learning, but when you mix up with people who are more deviant by themselves, so this kind of association makes you more deviant. The process of learning criminal behavior by association with the criminal and anti-criminal patterns involves all of the mechanisms that are involved in any other learning process. Remember the social learning process where we learn as a child, where we are going through the stages of socialization, where as an individual I'm learning the alphabets, the phonics, the grammatical errors and the ways of constructing a sentence. In a similar fashion, the similar psychological stages go when I need to cognize, recognize, identify with, and give a shape to my association. And when I give more of cognizance, more of respectability, more of attention to the people who are there around me, who are actually teaching me the seeds of deviance, I become more attracted towards them, and the social learning happens a similar way. There is nothing outside of the box. The psychological process which is involved in social learning, the same process goes in embedding the sense of negativity or deviance or violation within myself. There is nothing else. While criminal behavior is an expression of general needs and values, it is not explained by those general needs and values, since non-criminal behavior is an expression of the same needs and values. The attempts by many scholars to explain criminal behavior by general drives and values such as the happiness principle, striving for social status, the money motive or frustration have been and must continue to be futile, since they all explain lawful behavior as completely as they explain criminal behavior. Now don't be misguided by the drives and motives that actually propagates you towards the kind of behavior, because always try to think that the similar things happen, the similar things are taken into account when you explain a non-criminal behavior, where you are taking into account the motives, the reasons, the causes, the consequences. Those may be important, both for criminal and non-criminal behavior. But non-criminal behavior or deviant is a little bit different, and you cannot account it, you cannot explain it or kind of give justice to it only on the basis of the drives, motives, aspirations, causes and consequences that those kind of actions actually carry. An empirical test. Charles R. Tittle, Mary Joan Burke, and Elton F. Jackson undertook one of the most important tests of differential association theory to date and surveyed 1,953 individuals 15 years of age and older from Iowa, New Jersey, and Oregon. The authors developed separate scales designed to measure critical DAT variables. Likert type scales were created to measure associations, attitudes, and rationalizations concerning deviance and criminality, perceptions of crime, favorable expectations, fear of legal sanctions, motives, and drives. So this kind of theories are empirically tested when the researchers have actually devised a questionnaire and a scale of response where they have tried measuring an individual's attitude or an individual's preference or an individual's likeness for flouting laws, deviating laws, and whether they feel stigmatized, whether they feel frightened, whether and how it feels when they violate a social law. So those things have been taken into cognizance while the researchers were trying to find out whether criminality or deviance can be learnt. The items that were used in the questionnaire were many. How many people do you know personally who ever got into trouble because they did of the things we have been talking about? The assault and illegal gambling. And of all the people you know personally, how many of them do you know have done these things such as theft, illegal gambling at least once a year? To measure the perception items, one question was asked. If tomorrow you were to commit a criminal act, how much respect would you lose among people you know personally if they find out about it? An example of the measurement of fear of legal sanction is the item, how upset would you be if you were arrested? One item was created to measure motives and drives, and it is, there are a lot of things that people would like to do, even if they may not do them for one reason or other. I'd like you to tell me whether you would like to do these things almost always. A lot of crime time, once in a while, or never. So see, these were the types of questions that the researcher was repeatedly asking to understand whether the respondent was more likely to perform such a deviance, especially coming into influence with the people around him. That is why the questionnaire asked the respondent, how many of the people do you know who have committed such crimes? And will you do it yourself? And what should be the social unrest within you when you know that you have been arrested? What kind of social turbulence will that create in your mind? So these were the questions that the researchers had been asking to elicit the responses from the individual to find out whether he's actually learning the tropes of deviance. Now, what is the result? The study was designed to examine the influence of learning on committing criminal offense and smoking marijuana. Criminal offenses in this research ranged from theft-related items, assault to illegal gambling, and study included the normal array of independent or control variables. Association, perception of crime, favorable normative expectations, and the motive variable interacted together to influence criminality. And association increased use of marijuana by operating indirectly through motive. Through this kind of researches, the researcher was able to find out whether deviant acts like illegal trading, like gambling, smoking marijuana was actually associated with the factors embedded in the environment, or is it more likely to be triggered once you learn it from the people around you. And it was proved that association and perception of the crime favorable normative expectations was a big factor in titillating a man to perform the deviance, and he knows that this is what I will be expected of, and because he has known people who have come into such things and who have committed such crime, he is more likely to do it himself, because now it has become a simple thing for him. It is not something new, but he knew it. The people around him has done it, so that has given him the courage. I'll suggest every one of you to read Sutherland's very important book, The White Collar Crime. This is one of the crime where it is shown how this differential association develops and how individuals into one particular profession, especially into a in an organized sector, comes to learn their work and learn how to go on with wrong things and how they kind of compromise with the ethicalities of life. Here I am giving an example of a graduate student in an urban university, and because he has passed from the university and in order to supplement his work, he was working as a salesman in a shoe company. So what happened? One day the customer came and he wanted to have a high-heeled shoe. So the person said, oh my God, I have all other kinds of shoes, but the high-heeled shoes that you're wanting, that is not there in my shop. So the customer gave him a smile and he left the shop. Now what happened? The floor worker, he came to him and he said, what happened? Why did the customer left the shop? Then this student, he said that actually he wanted a shoe that was not in our stock, so I had to refuse him. I told him that it is not in our stock and he left. But the floor worker became very angry with him. He said, why did you say no to him? That the student said, what to do? I didn't have that kind of shoe that he was demanding. The floor worker said, see, your duty as a floor worker is to sell the kind of things which you have. It is not your duty to give the thing that a customer wants. You have to persuade him to buy certain things which we have. Don't be concerned with what you have. You have to manipulate the customer in buying the things that you have, the stock that you have. You will have to go nagging and persuading and managing the individual customer so that at the end of the day he is happy with your explanation and buys the shoe. Do another thing. Always make him barefooted. The moment he steps inside your shop, let him wear off, put off his shoes. So whatever happens, that customer won't be able to leave your shop. Then go on cajoling him, coaxing him, attracting him, influencing him unless you have, till you have sold out your thing to him. What do we learn? That these are the reasons, or these are the means by which unethical things, criminalities or wrong things, immoral things are learnt in an organized profession. And since it happens for a long day and it becomes a stereotype thing, he has come to know that all other shoe houses or shoe companies had been doing the same thing. So this is how the deviant act is consolidated and driven inside the head of an individual, and this is something which is learnt. Now we will come to the labeling theory. Labeling theory is sometimes referred to as a societal reaction school, which has its origin in the symbolic interaction theory, one of the leading general theories of sociology. And symbolic interactionism focuses on human interaction and the meanings and the interpretations associated with the human communication. As such, it is an attempt to unravel and to explain the symbolic nature of cultures in order to piece together the lives, values, beliefs, and the way people do. So labeling is how we put a label on the individual, how we put a tag on the individual. And how do we do it? By through constant interactions and communication with the people around me. This is how we attach meaning to it and give it a particular shape. We had been saying that it is through the ethnographic research or primary data-based research that we go for a labeling theory or symbolic interactionism. Labeling theory is very much a part of symbolic interactionism, or a kind of a theory of deviance which rests upon the pinnacles of symbolic interactionism. And it is immersed into a social setting and is able to learn a great deal about what to do, about what takes place, especially the meanings human attach to their interactions. So you have to go to the field in order to do this kind of researches, where you have to immerse yourselves in the lives of the people. Otherwise, you won't be able to understand the meanings that individuals attach and why they attach, and what is the course of the action, how individuals in turn react to those actors. It is to this tradition that labeling theory owes its origin, and labeling theory emphasizes the role of interaction in the construction of social labels. See, social labels are very important. A thief is not a thief. A prostitute, a call girl, they are never those by the words that go by. Okay, so these are the labels, these are the tags that have been imposed upon the individual. Therefore, we say deviance is something which is socially constructed through the means of social definitions, through which we attach a meaning to a particular individual on the basis of his actions, and that remains throughout his life. That doesn't get deleted, or that doesn't get erased. And therefore, labeling is the most prominent form of deviance because it changes one's lives and people have to live with his label. Frank Tannenbaum. Frank Tannenbaum is considered one of the first, if not the original, labeling theorist. His 1938 work laid the foundation for what would eventually become a labeling perspective. He was concerned with social reaction to juvenile delinquents after they are caught committing antisocial acts, and the consequences this portends for young people who were formally processed by the criminal justice system. But in the process, only some of the children are caught, although all may be likewise guilty. The formal processing results in the dramatization of the evil. Society actually worsens the situation concerning delinquents by formally labeling them. He becomes classified as a thief, perhaps, and the entire world about him suddenly changes. Maybe it was not just he, there were other peers who were involved in that kind of a act. But maybe they were set out, they were let free, and they were not caught. But one individual gets caught and he becomes tagged the thief for his entire life. What is more important is the process doesn't end there. He has to go through a judicial system. He is nabbed by the other people in the judiciary, and the process goes on till he is made a convict. And that tag remains with him throughout his life. That changes his living, his sustenance, and his very meaning for which he lives in the society. This is a process that we are saying, process of making a criminal, how you make criminals in the society, because criminals are not bred, they are made. Tannenbaum recognized the importance of official processing and coined the term tagging to refer to the official stamp or mark that is placed on the young people when they are arrested and processed through the criminal justice network. The process of making the criminal, therefore, is a process of tagging, defining, identifying, describing, emphasizing, making conscious and self-conscious. It becomes a way of stimulating, suggesting, emphasizing, and evoking the very traits that are complained of. The person becomes aware of his identity, which was not there. And the more and more you talk about it, you give it a meaning, you identify him like that, you describe him like that, you give him a meaning, and you also tell him how other people should react towards him. So this kind of tagging, defining, redefining, identifying with, and the process of emphasizing and making him conscious of his acts actually make him a criminal. That, kind of exacerbates the situations in the society, and he becomes a very stubborn criminal or a stubborn deviant. After he deviates from the given norms, then only he becomes a criminal. So the process of making a deviant is very complicated and rigorously followed by the society. It goes on, and there is no way you can cut it short. The basis of labeling theory. It is this type of thinking that forms the basis of labeling theory, and as you will see, puts forth the position that labels are long-lasting, potentially devastating to those who have been labeled, and perhaps impossible to eradicate. The labeled person becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, or one who, as a result of label, continues a life of deviance and crime. As I've already said you, that deviance creates labeling, and labeling creates deviance, and this kind of social tags or social labels stay with the person throughout his life. It makes his life more devastating, more painful, more gruesome, and more terrible. A kind of a nightmare from which he cannot just come out. There are different kinds of labels. I'll just give you some of the examples. Child molester, an idiot, prostitute, ex-con, terrorist, alcoholic, addict, mentally ill, poor, ugly, stupid, deviant, adulterer, liar, lazy, gay, homosexuals. All these are labels. The Edward M. Lemart, he was also one of the labeling sociologists. Chronologically, Edwin M. Lemart is a major figure in labeling theory, whose major contributions such as social pathology and human deviance, social problems and social control expanded on the work of Tannenbaum, whom we have already discussed, and is concerned for the long-time effects of deviance, especially when you impose such labels. Lemart introduced two of the most important concepts, not only as related to labeling theory, but also for the entire field of deviance, and these are the concepts of primary deviance and secondary deviance, and how primary deviance gets converted into secondary deviance. Let's look into it. Primary deviance. Primary deviance is a type of deviance that most of us have experienced, such as occasionally drinking alcohol underage and driving over the speed limit. The key here is primary deviance is infrequent behavior, and most saliently individuals who occasionally engage in it do not think of or define themselves as a deviant, nor do others. Lemart wrote primary deviance does not lead to symbolic reorganization at the level of self regarding attitudes and social roles. But on the other hand, secondary deviance is of a much different and serious nature, since it entails immersion into a life of deviance largely as a result of societal reaction. And deviants, in a sense, dig themselves into the deeper hole and are unable to change how society perceives them and how they have come to see themselves. In short, they have become labeled such as alcoholic, criminal, ex-con, crazy. Secondary deviance points to a special class of socially defined responses which people make to problems created by the societal reaction to their deviance. These problems are essentially moral problems which revolve around stigmatization, punishments, segregations, and social control. And the secondary deviant, as opposed to his actions, is a person whose life and identity are organized around the fact of deviance. See, primary deviance is what? Those are casual, Why? Because even sometimes people underage, they drink, sometimes they also drive, knowing that those things are not legal. But those are very one-off actions and might be very casual things which they keep doing. But that doesn't, influence their reorganization of the self. But once those things are repeatedly done and the individual keeps telling you, you are a thief, you are an addict, you are an alcoholic, you must stop doing it, that goes into the deep of your core self. And that changes the reorganization of the self. And at the same time, you try taking it more seriously. You start reacting to the responses. And you know that these things are coming to you and you're actually becoming that person. So one person, if you tell him thief, thief, thief every day, one day he will react like a thief. He will think that yes, I am a thief because I've done such things. So why should I get out of it? I should move more into my actions. So that is when you're putting yourself under the skin of a thief. And that becomes a core identity of yours. Now, Howard Becker's sequential model of deviant behavior. One is perceived as a deviant if you show an obedient behavior, where you are actually did not do anything, but despite that you will falsely accused and labeled. Again, you are not perceived as a deviant, you are confirming, not labeled. Again, when you are breaking the rules, breaking the behaviors, and you are a pure deviant, you have been labeled like that, you are a deviant, but you are secret because you have not been labeled. So these are the different ways through which I can actually typify my patterns of being deviant. Now let me tell you the context within which this kind of labeling theory became more significant and more ripe with the times. Labeling theory was ripe for the times, those times for the 1960s, where the establishment was under heavy scrutiny, especially by the young. This was an era of civil rights and anti-war demonstrations. It represented the origin of the modern feminist movements and other such social causes such as the Grey Power, the gay liberation movements, and the efforts of Cesar Chavez in California with the Mexican grape pickers. It is in this context that labeling theory thrived. It was new and refreshing to undergraduate students taking sociology classes and to young and aspiring sociologists. Labeling theory did not explain deviance as done previously. And labeling theory focused on the creation of social labels and the role that those play with affluence, influence, and power in the development and application of deviance designation. It appeared to have wide applicability, including criminals and the mentally ill, because, it was also the time of the 1960s when civil rights movement was becoming very important and people were fighting out for their rights. Be it the feminists, be it the blacks, be it the Negroes, be it the Africans, everyone was writing for their rights. And therefore, it was at this point of time they understood that how when you are labelled by others, and you are labelled by whom? You are labelled by the higher echelons of the society, by the higher classes of the society. So it is not just a way of imposing a tag upon you, it's also a very dirty and a wicked game by the society which must be stopped. And unless that stops, the ethnicity will not be finding its voice. We will have muffled voices in the society whose voices will remain unheard. So it is only through the civil rights movement when people become more and more conscious of their rights and dispositions, and they were less likely to feel ashamed by their own positions and by their own nativity and by their own ethnicity, that they were raising their voices and at the same time attacking the labels that were imposed upon them. In this context, I will suggest you to please go through a very interesting movie called The Harriet. Harriet Tubman is a heroic slave-turned-abolitionist whose dangerous missions led to the liberation of hundreds of enslaved African Americans via the Underground Railroad. She was actually this particular person, Harriet Tubman. She's actually a girl who's born into a family of the slaves. And you know what happened? The Englishmen, the English family who've actually made them the slave, they said that I free your father, I free your husband, but I will not free your mother, nor will I free you. And it was a decorum in those societies that once you are my slave, if I made the woman my slave, I can let her do anything that I want to. And the woman, if she has children, even those children will be my slave. And those children, if they are daughters, as Harriet was, because Harriet's mother was also a slave, and Harriet wanted to marry John. She was given the permission to marry John, but when Harriet wanted to raise her own family, the Englishmen refused, rebuked, and scolded her. They said, you don't have any right to have your own children, because even if you have your own children, those children will be owned by me. I can use them the way I want. So Harriet was very, very sad. And there you will find a word niggard. What is niggard? That is how the Africans, the black Africans were called. That is a kind of a labeling. If you can ever have an experience or time to go through this movie, you will see how labeling works and how it is detrimental for the young minds.